The gavel cracked down like thunder. "Sit down. Are you deaf or just stupid?" Judge Richard Caldwell didn't even glance up from his papers when he barked the order. His voice carried through the courtroom like a whip, sharp and merciless. Marcus Johnson didn't flinch. He stood tall in his navy blue tailored suit, eyes steady, jaw tight. The silence hung heavy. Then Caldwell's head snapped up. His pale face flushed crimson, veins pulsing at his temple. With a violent strike, the gavel echoed against the marble walls. "Typical," he sneered. "Probably can't even read the charges against you." Only then did Marcus lower himself into his chair. His back remained straight, unbroken. His leather briefcase sat neatly at his side, gold initials, MJ, catching the harsh fluorescent lights. Caldwell read the charges like they were beneath him: reckless endangerment, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest. His tone dripped venom. 60 days in county jail. Next time, maybe you'll think twice before acting like you own the place. The sentence landed like a sledgehammer. 60 seconds. That's all it took to flip a man's world upside down. What happened next would shake the foundations of this courtroom forever. For 15 years, Judge Richard Caldwell had built his reputation on one principle: order. His courtroom was his kingdom, the mahogany paneled walls standing as silent witnesses to his creed. Justice isn't about feelings, it's about knowing your place. That's what he drilled into his clerks, leaning back in his high-back leather chair, crownless but king all the same. "Some people understand respect," he would say. "Others need to be taught." And in Caldwell's court, lessons were always harsher for some than for others. Marcus Williams, charged with assault, 18 months in county. Bradley Thompson, same charge, 3 weeks later. 6 months probation. The difference: Marcus was black, Bradley was white. Caldwell, of course, would never say that aloud. He called it character and background. Look at their history. Look at where they come from. And then, with that loaded pause, look at their associations. The message was clear. The consequences, devastating. At judicial conferences, his colleagues toasted him with expensive scotch at the country club. "Caldwell's tough but fair," they said, nodding. That's why his district stays so peaceful. But behind the polished image lay something far uglier. When attorney Keisha Roberts, a young black lawyer, raised an objection during a domestic violence case, Caldwell silenced her with a smirk. "Counselor, perhaps you should learn proper courtroom procedure before lecturing this court." Minutes later, her white colleague made the same objection. Caldwell leaned forward, voice warm, sustained. "Thank you for bringing that to my attention." It happened again, and again, and again. Defendants, attorneys, families in the gallery. Black voices dismissed, black faces punished more harshly, black families warned to stay quiet for reactions Caldwell ignored when they came from white families. He never used slurs. He never left evidence. He didn't need to. He weaponized tone, language, and power with surgical precision. This defendant clearly lacks a moral foundation necessary for rehabilitation, he'd say about a young black man. But for a white man with the same record, this appears to be an unfortunate lapse in judgment. I'm confident he can learn from his mistakes. And the media, they loved it. Tough on crime, strong on values. The headlines declared, his name floated toward appellate court consideration like a crown being lowered onto his head. No mention of the whispers in courthouse bathrooms. No mention of the public defenders who begged for transfers. No mention of the court reporters who said, quietly, "He's got it out for us." Tony Washington knew it better than anyone. A veteran public defender, he'd seen too many lives shattered. "Same case, same weed," he muttered after Caldwell sentenced his black client to prison. "White kid gets rehab. My kid gets prison." But even Tony spoke in hushed tones. Everyone knew the danger of crossing Caldwell. Cross him, and suddenly your motions vanished into bureaucratic black holes. Bail conditions worsened. Cases became landmines. Still, there was a breaking point. Malik Jefferson, 23, college graduate, no prior record, caught with a small amount of cocaine. The prosecutor recommended probation, community service. But Caldwell's voice thundered across the room. You had every opportunity to succeed. Instead, you chose a path of criminality that too many of your community prefer. The word sliced through Malik's mother. She gasped. Caldwell's gavel struck down like a bolt of lightning. Control yourself or leave this courtroom. 2 years in state prison. That same week, Connor Bradley. Same charge. Same amount. Same recommendation. Mr. Bradley, this represents poor judgment in a difficult time. 6 months probation. Mandatory counseling. Don't waste this opportunity. The disparity was staggering. The injustice, undeniable. Yet who would dare challenge him? Appeals were crushed. Complaints disappeared. Caldwell remained untouchable. Behind closed doors, his mask slipped. These people think they can waltz in here demanding fairness, he told his clerk. My grandfather didn't fight in World War II so criminals could lecture me. His secretary, Maria Santos, wrote it all down, not for justice, for survival, because in Caldwell's world, order meant obedience, and disobedience had consequences. His promotion seemed inevitable. His conviction rate gleamed like armor. His sentences rarely overturned. The establishment adored him, but what they didn't see, what they refused to see, were the families broken, the future stolen, the young men hardened by prison instead of helped by justice. And every single day, with every sentence, Judge Caldwell's shadow grew darker. Trust in the system. That's what they preached. Equality under the law. But in Caldwell's courtroom, equality was a slogan carved into marble, not a truth practiced in sentencing. 3 months before that traffic stop, Judge Richard Caldwell received the call he had been waiting for. The appellate nomination was his. Unofficial, of course, but guaranteed. That night, under the chandeliers of the country club, his circle toasted him like royalty. Expensive cigars, crystal glasses filled with aged scotch. Richard's exactly what this state needs, Senator Williams proclaimed, raising his glass high. A man who understands that compassion without accountability isn't justice at all. The irony dripped thicker than the bourbon in their tumblers. Because in Caldwell's world, accountability only flowed one way, down. What none of them knew was that power, even judicial power, has limits. And sometimes those limits arrive disguised in an Italian suit. Sometimes they walk in carrying a leather briefcase with gold initials. Sometimes justice arrives looking like the very thing you spent your career trying to destroy. And Judge Caldwell was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Tuesday morning, 8:30 sharp. The state attorney's office on 7th Street buzzed with its usual storm of motion. Phones rang. Paralegals wheeled cart stack with boxes. Junior prosecutors clutched coffee cups like lifelines. Marcus Johnson stepped through the glass doors, moving with the calm authority of a man who had nothing to prove. At the security desk, Jennifer Kim, the new victim services coordinator, intercepted him nervously. "Excuse me, sir, if you're here to file a complaint. The elevator to the 3rd floor." Marcus gave her a calm, measured smile. "Thank you, Miss Kim. I'll find my way." The security guard, Danny Rodriguez, looked up from his newspaper and froze. Recognition flickered across his face. "Morning, sir," he said quickly, standing taller. "Didn't expect to see you this early." Jennifer's cheeks went crimson. She realized her mistake too late. "That's Marcus Johnson," Danny whispered as Marcus walked away. "Lead prosecutor. Been here longer than most of the judges." The elevator doors slid shut on Jennifer's mortified expression. On the 5th floor, the energy shifted instantly. Conversations cut short. Assistants lifted their heads. The tide of the office turned toward its center of gravity. "Morning, boss," called Sarah Martinez, his senior deputy, not even looking up from a mountain of case files. "Caldwell materials are on your desk. Statistical analysis came in at midnight. It's comprehensive." Marcus nodded, striding toward his corner office. Through the glass walls, the evidence looked overwhelming. Graphs, charts, 15 years of sentencing data, color-coded and brutal. Bankers' boxes stacked in rows like soldiers. Inside, the truth stared back at him. Caldwell's pattern wasn't sloppy. It wasn't careless. It was surgical, methodical, brilliantly disguised. His phone buzzed. "Johnson? It's David Carter, Statistical Services. I ran the analysis 3 times because I didn't believe it. The numbers are unreal. How bad? Marcus asked, already bracing himself. 42% harsher sentences for black defendants compared to white defendants with identical charges and histories. In some categories, over 60%. Marcus, I've never seen anything like it. Marcus scribbled a note. Send everything to my secure email. And David, this stays between us. Of course. But Marcus, this will destroy careers. That's the point. 3 hours later, Marcus had what he needed. Caldwell wasn't just biased, he was systematic. Precise. He'd turned prejudice into policy and hidden it beneath procedure. A soft knot broke his focus. So, Tony Williams is here about the Morrison case. Send him in. Tony closed the door behind him. Marcus, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, the Caldwell situation. Maybe we should involve the Federal Civil Rights Division before. No, Marcus's voice was calm, firm. We handle our own house. Marcus, this is systematic civil rights abuse. How many cases have you tried in his courtroom, Tony? 24, maybe more. Why? Marcus turned his monitor toward him. Graph glowed on the screen. Because your black clients received sentences 38% harsher than your white clients on comparable charges. Tony's face drained of color. Jesus Christ. It's not your fault, Marcus said gently. Caldwell's been playing this game for 15 years, and is very good at it. But it ends now. Tony swallowed. So, what's your plan? Marcus walked to the window, staring down at the courthouse across the street. From this angle, he could see the full 4 chambers where Caldwell sat on his throne. The plan is evidence. Undeniable, bulletproof evidence. But there's one piece missing. What's that? Personal experience. Tony frowned. You can't just... Wait. Marcus, tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting. Marcus smiled faintly. Sometimes the best way to catch a predator is to become the prey. You're talking about deliberately getting yourself arrested, just to end up in Caldwell's courtroom. I'm talking about giving this investigation its final nail in the coffin. That's insane, if this goes wrong. Then I lose my career. But if I don't do this, more Marcus Williams cases, more Malik Jeffersons, more lives crushed while Bradley Connors walked free. The room fell into silence. Outside, traffic hummed 5 stories below, oblivious. Finally, Tony sighed. What do you need from me? Deniability, genuine shock. The fewer who know, the better. This has to look real. Marcus sat back at his desk, pulling a different file. There's more. My brother Michael, pulled over in Caldwell's district last month. Speeding. The officer tagged him for aggressive behavior, failure to comply, misdemeanors, but they could easily be upgraded. Tony shook his head. You're putting everything on the line. Marcus's eyes hardened. My career doesn't matter if the system is broken. And it's not just broken. Tony, it's weaponized. After Tony left, Marcus sat alone in the glow of his desk lamp. The wall of evidence loomed around him. 15 years of broken lives mapped in numbers and names. His phone buzzed again. A text. Meeting with appellate nomination committee moved to next week. Congratulations in advance. Senator Williams. Marcus exhaled slowly. Caldwell's promotion wasn't just coming. It was imminent. The clock was ticking. Justice had a deadline. On the wall above him, his Harvard Law diploma gleamed like a battle standard. Beside it, his Yale Master of Laws. Below, 3 Prosecutor of the Year awards glittered in gold frames. But tonight, Marcus wasn't thinking about accolades. He was thinking about Michael. His brother's voice echoed in his mind from a late-night phone call 3 weeks ago. Marcus, I need a lawyer. A good one. This white cop, man, he was looking for a reason. The traffic stop had been textbook harassment. Michael, driving his BMW home after a client dinner, pulled over for weaving. The officer's report painted a familiar picture, an aggressive black male, uncooperative, reaching for something, failing to obey commands. Marcus knew the script by heart. He'd read it too many times in Caldwell's courtroom. But this time, the defendant wasn't just another name on a docket. This time, it was his brother. Marcus Johnson had always been known as the calm one in the family, the careful one, the man who believed in systems, in rules, in building a case the right way. But on this night, his home office looked less like a prosecutor's study and more like a war room. 3 battered bankers' boxes lined the wall, each one packed with 15 years of case files. Every sheet, every margin note, was a piece of evidence pointing toward one truth. Judge Richard Caldwell was not just biased. He was dangerous. Marcus flipped open his laptop, pulling up the case management system. There it was, Michael's name, his baby brother, Thursday morning. Traffic violations on paper, but the resisting arrest charge had landed the hearing squarely in Caldwell's courtroom. Marcus muttered under his breath, too trusting, always too trusting. He had seen the pattern too many times. Black men and women who thought their education, their credentials, even their polished courtroom attire might shield them. But in Caldwell's court, none of it mattered. On the desk, a red folder lay waiting. Marcus opened it, and the faces of ruined lives stared back at him. Letters from mothers and fathers. Photos of young men with bright futures that collapsed under the weight of Caldwell's sentences. One mother had written in shaky ink, "Judge Caldwell looked at my son like he was garbage. 2 years in prison for something a white boy got probation for. Same crime, same amount of drugs, but my Malik didn't have the right skin color." The words burned into Marcus's mind. He thought of Michael. He thought of every black professional who walked into that courtroom with dignity only to be stripped of it in minutes. He wasn't going to let that happen again. Not to his brother, and not to the next family on Caldwell's docket. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife. "Working late again? Dinner's getting cold." He stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Save me a plate. I'm almost done." But that was a lie. He wasn't almost done. He was just beginning. The plan had been forming for months, and tonight it crystallized. 2 events, same day. Michael's hearing in the morning. Caldwell's appellate nomination hearing in the afternoon. Perfect timing. Marcus clicked into a secure folder marked Operation Evidence. Detailed profiles appeared on screen. Prosecutors, caseloads, schedules. All the moving parts of the system he knew how to bend. What he needed was simple but dangerous. Get himself arrested in Caldwell's district. Enough charges to guarantee an arraignment in front of the judge, but nothing federal. Just like Michael's case, resisting arrest, a scuffle, something to put him face to face with a man he had been tracking for years. The phone rang again. Caller ID, Patricia Thompson. A friend, and now a judge herself. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Are you building a case against Richard Caldwell?" Silence stretched out, tight as a rope. Marcus finally said, "Why would you ask me that?" Patricia's voice was low but firm. "Because his name came up at the judicial conference. People notice unusual requests, sentencing data, all leading back to his district. If someone were investigating, my advice would be careful. He has powerful friends. But Marcus, if someone were building such a case, they'd have my full support." His destroying faith in the system. Hypothetically, of course, when the call ended, Marcus encrypted an email to his deputy. "Sarah, clear your calendar for Friday morning. Emergency federal civil rights consult. Tell no one. If something happens Thursday, you'll lead prosecutor. No exceptions." He hit send. The next morning, the federal building conference room filled with quiet tension. Civil rights investigators, state board members, the attorney general's people, everyone knew why they were here. Dr. Angela Foster, an expert in judicial statistics, spread her charts across the table. Each graph was a weapon. Each number, a blade aimed at Caldwell. "In 30 years of work," she began, "I have never seen disparities this severe." Her laser pointer cut across the screen. Judge Caldwell's sentencing shows a 42% gap between black and white defendants for identical crimes. The statewide average is 12. Even that's considered unacceptable. This isn't bias. This is a system rigged by design. Case after case appeared on the projector. Marcus Williams, 18 months in jail. Connor Bradley, 6-month probation. Same crime, same background, different skin, and there were 47 more just like it. The room fell into heavy silence. Everyone knew what they were seeing. This was bigger than a judge with bad instincts. This was years of deliberate injustice, calculated to break faith in the very idea of law. And outside that room, Marcus Johnson was already setting the final stage. Two paths lay open before him. One, safe but silent. The other, dangerous but just. He had chosen his path, and there was no turning back.